Hi guys, today I want to take you on a whistle-stop tour of what I call the Jacobite Road, although what maps simply call road number 9. It's the road that goes from Edinburgh round by Stirling and north through Inverness up to Scrabstar Harbour away north of Thurso. Originally, this would have been on that road way back in the old days, okay? In fact, you can see down here, I don't know if you can see etched here, Perth and an arrow this way, okay? This is proper old, okay? So, the road that I'm talking about, so much in Jacobite history happened within about a mile either side of that road that it's like a thread of tissue going through history. It's incredible, and I'm going to take you on that road today. We're going to stop off at Sheriffmuir, Dunkeld, Killiecrankie, Struan, Blair Castle, Moy, Killiecrankie, and of course Culloden. I don't think I got them all in just the right geographical order. That doesn't matter, right? I'm going to leave, there's going to be Google Maps below so that you can follow that road, and when you do it, we're going to do it today at a pretty whistle-stop kind of pace. But you're going to be able to do it at your leisure, you're going to be able to visit places of interest, and you're going to be able to enjoy the beautiful countryside that we're going to pass through. Come on, let's do it. I'm just above Dunblane at Sheriffmuir. Now, the beautiful views north to the Highlands belie the fact that in 1715 this was a location of the culminating battle in the Jacobite rising against George, Elector of Hanover. He'd been invited as monarch of a recently united kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. If you follow the B road across the moor, you can stop for a minute and look north to take in the breathtaking views of the Highland line that a camera can't replicate. However, you turn this way and you get the view that would have been enjoyed by the Jacobite forces who came up here to meet the Duke of Argyll's troops arriving from Stirling. Now, if you're wondering why they came all the way up here to have a battle, it was actually an accident. Some Hanoverian troops had come up here to reconnoitre by looking down on the Jacobite movements below. Thinking that the whole Hanoverian force was coming up here to the high ground, the Jacobites brought their forces up. The Hanoverians panicked and brought their entire force up. The whole thing ended up pretty messy. Now, the trees away behind me, behind the tail there, wouldn't have been there at the time. In fact, I'm going to take you down to a monument to the right of those trees and then to a marker on the other side of those trees. Come on. In 1915, 200 years after the battle, the Clan MacRae Society erected this monument to the MacRaes who fell. It's worth sparing a thought for the men who died on both sides. Husbands, fathers, sons. Yet the Forestry Commission plant trees on this battlefield. The A9 has been duelled through the 1689 Killiecrankie battlefield, and now a commercial development has been built at Culloden. Paranoid? Who, me? You can follow this path to what's known as the Gathering Stone. It's now protected by iron bars, but it's said to be the point at which on his horse the Earl of Mar, the leader of the Jacobite forces, commenced the battle. And they've actually improved the path out to here now. And there's no gift shop, there's no book shop, there's no coffee shop, but it's worth a visit to get a sense of this place that's imbued with the spirit of men on both sides who fought and died for what they believed in. Now, if you watched the video on the Battle of Killiecrankie that I did, then Dunkeld was the town from which the Scottish Government Williamite troops set off north on the morning of the battle. It was to here that the Jacobite troops came after the Battle of Killiecrankie to besiege Dunkeld. Okay. Now, here you can see a little monument there in the grounds of the cathedral to the Cameronians who defended the town against the Jacobites. And to this day, I see flowers left from time to time here. Now, the cathedral here was to be the last redoubt where they fell back to, the Cameronian troops, as they burned everything behind them. Very little was left after the siege. But it's a lovely place to make a stop on the Jacobite road north. There's a little museum inside the cathedral, and I love the setting of the grounds here, spanning down to the river. Come on, let me show you. I just love this spot. And in the town there are cafes, hotels, pubs. It's really quaint. The only problem is there's never enough time before you have to be on your way again. I must do a video at some point just about Dunkeld itself. It's a lovely town and you should spend some time here. The next stop on the Jacobite Road is Killiecrankie. Now, the Battle of Killiecrankie was the first set battle of Scotland's Jacobite Wars. And here at Killiecrankie there's a National Trust Centre. It's an idyllic place to make a stop on the Jacobite Road. Now, the battle itself took place a couple of miles up the road, but this National Trust Centre lies on the southern fringes of the battlefield. But here at the Visitor Centre you can enjoy the flora and fauna that were left. And you can visit the Soldiers' Leap here, where a fleeing red-cloaked soldier jumped 18 feet across the River Garry to escape pursuing Jacobite troops. I wonder if I could make a jump like that. And if you continue on the back road, not the main A9, but the back road through the village of Killiecrankie, then you'll pass by the Claverhouse stone. That's the stone at which John Graham of Claverhouse, the Jacobite leader, is said to have fallen at the Battle of Killiecrankie. And then, of course, you'll continue north. Hey! And Blair Castle grounds and gardens. Blair Castle features in the Jacobite counter-revolution of 1689 and in the 1745 Bonnie Prince Charlie uprising. It was a competing sides trying to occupy Blair Castle that led to the Battle of Killiecrankie. The Murray of Atholl family had divided loyalties throughout the Jacobite years. In fact, the first Duke of Atholl's staff effectively locked him out and barricaded themselves in for the Jacobite cause. And then a couple of generations later, the Murray of Atholl brothers took opposing sides in the Jacobite Civil War. One brother even had to write a letter of apology to the other for the damage that he caused by cannon when he besieged the family pile behind me for Bonnie Prince Charlie. The Prince spent time here on his triumphal road south and his fateful road back. There's loads to see, there's lovely gardens. John Graham of Claverhouse is Bonnie Dundee's buried here. It's lovely. There's a tea room! Cream scones, cream scones! So, we're at the House of Bruar on the A9, okay? Now, there are a number of reasons why you might come to the House of Bruar on the Jacobite Road. It might be that you want to buy some cashmere or some tweed, or it might just be that you want to go to the best toilets on the Jacobite Road, particularly for the ladies. They're very plush, smells like a rose, the toilets in there. Anyway, on the other side of the road is a place called Struan. And you'll see here, there's the Clan Donaghy Museum, and the 13th clan chief of Clan Donaghy was Alexander Robertson of Struan, and he's more important in the story of the Jacobites. Indeed, he was out in all three of the key Jacobite uprisings. He was with Bonnie Dundee at the Battle of Killiecrankie. He was at the Battle of Sheriffmuir fighting for the Jacobites. So it was no surprise that when Bonnie Prince Charlie arrived, raised the standard at Glenfinnan and came down the Highlands to Perth, that Alexander Robertson of Struan joined up and indeed was at the Battle of Prestonpans with Bonnie Prince Charlie there. After the Battle of Prestonpans, he got a lot of great loot. And indeed, apparently, he got John Cope, the leader of the Hanoverian side, okay? Robertson of Struan apparently got his coach as loot and brought this coach up to the Highlands, a wholly inappropriate place to be running about in a coach, right? And but indeed, before they got back to Struan, one of the wheels came off. And he arrived back in Struan with his clansmen carrying the coach and him inside is that he was an old buffy by this time, and he didn't continue all the way down to Derby, but he came home triumphant in this coach. Anyway, here at the House of Bruar, it's a nice stop. Oh, incidentally, up the back you can go up, there's a lovely set of waterfalls and stuff like that. But it's certainly a nice stop, worth a refreshment, and a toilet stop, if nothing else. Going to see the Clandonald Museum. It's nice. On the edge of the little town of Killiecrankie here is Ruthven Barracks. Now, you take the turn off from the A9 to come through Newton Moor and you'll find the Highland Folk Museum. I'm not going to lie to you, you could spend a whole day there. Their cream scones aren't great, but one really special thing that they've created at this open-air living museum is a replica of a little Highland township. It's well worth the visit. Let's go inside. Killiecrankie is the next town after Newton Moor, and Ruthven Barracks here was one of several forts and barracks built so that the new regime could keep the Highlands in check. As you walk around inside, you get a feel for what it must have been like for the redcoat soldiers who manned these barracks as they kept their eye on the surrounding countryside. And it's a surrounding countryside that's well worth keeping an eye on. Bonnie Prince Charlie's men tried but failed in their attempts to take Ruthven Barracks as they headed south from Glenfinnan. But they did take it successfully on the way back north, hence its current state. And it was here that the clansmen finally gathered after Culloden. This gathering was to be the start of the new campaign against the British Army. I've read that there were more gathered here for the Jacobites than stood at Culloden. Maybe because they knew what was in store for their communities, and they had to defend themselves and their people at all costs. From here, a message was sent to Prince Charles to let him know that his loyal clansmen were ready for the fight. His response was, every man for himself. So, we've made a stop on the Moy Road, okay? Now, that might be quite difficult to find, but don't worry, I'll put a wee marker on the map somewhere, okay? And I'm going to take you on a little woodland walk. Come with me. This will be speeded up. Now, there's a path here, okay, and it'll take you down to the loch side, and there's a lovely woodland walk, okay, and I'm going to go down there, I'm going to tell you a bit of a story. Now, when you get here, to make sure you know how to get there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a series of acorns so that you can follow the acorns or some fat squirrels in order to get down to the loch side. But it'll be easy, you just follow the path, okay? Come with me. You can take a lovely walk along this path here, along the loch side of Loch Moy. Moy Hall was the home across the loch of Anne Mackintosh. Her husband was an officer in the British Army, but she was a staunch Jacobite. So when her husband was away with the Hanoverian forces, she raised the clan for Prince Charlie, gaining his sobriquet, Colonel Anne. The prince made a stop here on his way north, and he was welcomed by Colonel Anne. But 11 miles away in Inverness were Hanoverian forces and her husband. And when they heard about the prince, they sent a force of 1,500 men to capture him. But a servant waiting at the Hanoverian table had sent a young lad called Lachlan Mackintosh to run the 11 miles to Moy here and warn the colonel. What did she do? With the Hanoverians approaching and no way to defend her or the prince, she sent the prince on an escape route along the shores of Loch Moy here. She sent her blacksmith and 4 other men along the Inverness road to await the redcoat troops. and the 5 hid in peat stacks on either side of the road. They fired shots, ran from place to place, and shouted the battle cries of various different clans to make it seem like there were more of them. The Redcoats panicked. Many of them fled. When their commander, Lord Loudon, got back to Inverness, he said, "They were standing 10 deep, I tell you." In fact, a blacksmith and his 5 clansman pals had routed 1,500 troops of a world superpower in what is now known as the Rout of Moy. Let's take a walk. It goes without saying that at the end of the Jacobite Road is Culloden. Now, there's no way I can do this place justice in a few words at the end of this whistle-stop tour. That attempt's going to have to be made on a future date. Suffice to say that there's a visitor centre there. It's really interesting. They've got artefacts, they've got AV presentations, they do talks and they do battlefield walks. But there's nothing more sobering than looking out across the gap between the red flags of the Hanoverian lines and the blue flags of the Jacobite lines and imagining what it must have been like to run across that boggy field in the face of withering cannon, grape shot and small arms fire onto the piercing points of bayonets. And all for a prince who days later, as you stand at Ruthven Barracks, will say, "Every man for himself," and then he will flee to France. If you've liked this, then share it. There are links to join my mailing list or support community down below in the comment section. Meantime, how many doctors are going to be alive? Cheer in, Drasta.